I'm on Swerve in that corner. Whoa. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 3 of the Fundamentally Sound podcast. I'm Jared here with my brother Zach, and we are here to talk everything NBA basketball. What is good? How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Bucks are about to play in about 20 minutes or so. We're getting down to 25, 30 games left or so of the season. There's a lot of close races. The West looks significantly stronger than the East, but then again, you still have contenders in both conferences. So, playoff basketball is around the corner, and it'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, super exciting stuff. I'm on Swerve in that corner. Whoa, whoa. Dude,
Yeah,
I
Lavar, we
literally,
got we got a lot to
dude,
talk
I
about
can't,
with him.
okay, I can't stop saying it.
Yeah,
Like
it
for
is
anyone who hasn't seen Lavar's TikToks on the
on
Premby
Premby's
account on
account.
Twitch, I'm back on Premby account. Dude, they are absolute comedy.
Yeah.
I
And yeah,
literally like throughout my day, like I just find myself going, "What's up, TikTok? It's Lavar. I'm back on Premby account."
I don't know, man.
Like,
It's crazy just like how much of a like obviously we all knew what LeVar was like and how he was when mostly when Lonzo and Leangelo or LaMelo I should say were up and coming, and then he kind of like he's a very supportive dad and like wants the best for his kids, and all three of them are succeeding in what they're doing right now. And then it came out, what was it, last week, that he had a medical um,
yeah,
issue and he had to have his foot amputated. But he's LeVar, so he can grow it back if he wanted to.
bro,
So it's not that big
that's
of a deal.
I can't believe like someone commented that like it's
Yeah,
it's Lavar, he'll
yeah,
grow it back, and then he fully like ran with that too.
yeah,
He made
yeah.
the cap. He's like, if I want, I'll grow it back.
Dude, it's just,
They
yeah,
they might
he,
take my leg, but they can't take this Premby account.
dude, it's just,
Like
yeah, he's a,
name another
yeah,
person in the world that would have this much
yes,
like joy for life after going through a
yeah,
serious like medical thing like that,
mm,
dude. And
yeah,
yeah, and then on top of that, all he does every video is he just plugs Leangelo's songs.
yeah. And
Like,
again, just being a supportive dad, like both of his
yeah,
kids are in the NBA, or like his like
two
Lonzo
of the
and
three,
Lamelo
yeah,
are in the NBA. Lamelo is having a phenomenal year. He's averaging. See, I don't know if he's still averaging close to 30, but again, he's on the
yeah.
Hornets, but he's the only really bright spot there. Lonzo had his health issues, his knee problems, so that kind
He's
of sucked. But
finally
he's
healthy though.
still got a new contract,
Yeah,
and yeah, then obviously like Leangelo is now one of the biggest artists on TikTok,
up and
thanks to
coming
Lamar.
artist. Yeah, yeah. I mean, dude, the fact that like he's got one hit and then he's been teasing two more that haven't even come out yet.
Yeah.
Like he's
Hmm.
he's killing it right now. Like it looks like Lavar might actually be right. Like he's gonna go 3 for 3.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Like
sure.
I just
But
it's yeah, it's crazy to think about.
uh-huh.
Like especially like because he told us all, however long ago that was, almost a decade ago, I think.
Yeah.
When Lonzo was coming up in the draft and stuff, and
Hmm.
like
Yep.
through everything, everyone clowned him, but he's been nothing
Yeah.
but like a supportive dad, like a character for
And that
sure, but just
yeah.
a great supportive dad.
Yeah. And it's just like yeah, the amount of people that would kill to have a dad like that, and obviously like you see the clips, even the older clips from when like Lamelo was in like AAU, that kind of like how he is very critical of Lamelo because he wants the best for him, and that's how it should be. And you
Hmm.
see the results of his coaching and his parenting. It's paid off, and the big big props to Lavar, and now he is just living his best life. And even though he doesn't have he only got one foot, he's still in. I mean, whenever he pops up, I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if he is just permanently like that happy because um
Right.
it seems to be that just like how his personality is, how he's so outgoing, and I saw somebody comment. They said he's the original rage baiter, and he kind of is. Obviously his clips when he was on First Take, some of the things he said, but he's just a joy to watch, and especially now with him getting some kind of presence on social media, it's even better.
I mean, look, like for $120 per video on
Yeah.
Cameo, I'd probably be doing the same thing, so can't really blame him.
Right. Right.
He's
Right.
getting his bag and making viral clips every single
Yep.
week. In other injury related NBA news, I think the Wemby news came out. I think it was a couple days after we recorded the last
I
podcast.
think it was like a Thursday or Friday
Yeah,
of last week. It was probably about a week ago or so.
yeah,
But
but
yeah, that one kind of out of
Yeah,
nowhere, honestly.
Wemby getting shut down for the season because of a blood clot. Um,
Yeah. So
I mean, not that it really impacts the Spurs too much now, but like, hopefully it's not like a big concern going
mhm.
forward, you
And then
know?
obviously he'll miss the 65 game threshold. So now defense player of the years. I mean, what Jaren
Well, and
Jackson
that
and
has
Bam.
Evan
You,
Mobley.
you talked about that. Oh, Evan Mobley, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah,
brought
it
that up. That
has
that has very big
huge,
implications for contracts.
yeah, because if either of them get depoy, um,
Hmm.
for Jaren Jackson Jr., if he wins it, then he's eligible for a supermax. And then for Evan
Hmm.
Mobley, if he wins it, he gets a huge incentive bonus in his rookie scale extension that he's on
Hmm.
right now. So there's
Yeah.
huge financial implications for both of them. And
Hmm.
I think now that Wemby's out, like that race is wide open between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because it
Yep.
seemed like, I mean, Wemby pretty much had that thing locked up already, but
Yeah.
now that he's not
Yeah.
going to get that 65 game mark, um,
Hmm.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens the rest of the season with them.
Yeah, and then also kind of more bad news on top of that for Spurs fans. Pop's shut down, or not shut down. He's not coming back this year,
Yeah,
and they're not really sure about his future for coaching. I mean, he is definitely getting up there as far as like uh, should be retired, but Wemby's keeping him young or trying to at least, and he had his health concerns. And I think we kind of knew he was like going to be done after he was gone for a long time. We didn't hear much about him, but yeah, he there's a chance has he won't coach again. There is a chance for that. So we'll see what happens
right,
down that
right.
road. And I don't know if like the assistant, I don't know who their interim is right now. Um, but if they stick with him or if they go a different direction, it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like this offseason is going to be a big turning point for the Spurs. Kind of
Hmm.
like a changing of the guards almost, especially,
Right.
if Pop doesn't come back, which looks
Uh.
like is definitely a possibility.
Uh.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who's been with that franchise for 30 years, won
Hmm.
5 finals with them. Um, easily a Hall of Fame coach, greatest coach
Right.
in Spurs history, arguably, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Like
Right.
losing someone like that, like, I
Hmm.
mean, do you think do you think it could stunt Wemby's growth at all too, like
I
going
don't.
forward?
I don't. I don't know. I think like a lot of like I think there is a chance it does a little bit, but I think a lot of it too is that we're gonna see Wemby physically grow into his body once he's with NBA trainers and nutritionists and stuff like that. So that's gonna help a lot. But I do think like obviously when you lose a guy like Pop, it's just his knowledge of the game. For someone as young as Wemby who doesn't nearly like know nearly like anything compared to what Pop does. It will hinder him for sure, but I mean, he's having a good year even with Pop not being there most of the year. So I think he'll be fine, but having Pop there is only going to help him. But I do
Right.
think like even if Pop isn't there, he'll be okay. But I do think that it'll be maybe a little bit slower of a development with him if Pop's not there.
Um, I don't know. My thought too, because Tim Duncan was on that staff, at least for a little
Yeah,
bit, right? Like a couple years ago.
yeah,
Um,
yep,
I don't know if he's still involved in the organization in any facet, but I would have to think that if he's interested in coaching, that he's
hmm
gotta be at least in consideration to be on like this next staff.
yeah,
Um,
and
if not
I don't know,
that, if not the head coach, I'm assuming probably not because the Spurs are a good organization and they wouldn't just appoint someone with
right,
little to no coaching experience to be their head
hmm
coach. Um,
right,
but I don't
but
know.
and the
I
thing
feel
too,
like
yeah, I don't know,
yeah, I feel like maybe reaching out and seeing if he would want to get back
yeah,
into coaching might even like help Wemby too. Considering um,
hmm
Tim Duncan's background, his pedigree, and playing similar position to Wemby. Power forward, center. They're both big bodies,
right,
and like I'm sure Wemby could obviously learn a lot um, from Tim Duncan. So maybe that's
yeah,
something they think about, and maybe that's a card they have in their back pocket that they're looking to play. But
yeah,
I don't know.
and I think
Interesting.
so.
And
Yeah, I just think that like you see it with like Giannis has done it, and all these younger guys have done it, where they train with former All Stars, former Hall of Famers, and even if like Wemby and Tim Duncan like connect in some way over the summer, and it's training, it's all these little things. Even if he's not coaching there during the season, that summer, if he's able to find someone like Tim Duncan or Tim Duncan himself it'll help a lot. I think that's the difference between a lot of good versus great players. It's just being like continually wanting to learn and get better. And Wemby has so much to learn yet. And I do think like having Tim Duncan, obviously he won't be the head coach because, like you said, their Spurs won't do that. But having him there, um, it wouldn't hurt to reach out and see how he's feeling if this is something he really wants to do, and being able to mentor Wemby that close could definitely be something that would bring him um, to the Spurs.
right. Well, and I mean that's all also contingent on Wemby's health going
Hmm
forward. You know,
Yeah. So,
hopefully, hopefully this is just like a one-time thing. It's not something serious
hmm
with his blood clot,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because I mean we saw
And
that
yeah,
with Chris Bosh, early retirement because of
that
blood
was
clots.
yeah.
Um, hopefully, he's super young and obviously
hmm
has some of the best physicians in the world. So hopefully it's something they can get sorted out. So it's not
Yeah.
like a chronic health issue going forward or anything that would be career altering.
hmm
Something else kind of similar I wanted to touch on is Luca um, making not his return, but playing his first game against the Mavs. Um, After all these reports of his
Uh-huh.
conditioning and the thought that um, apparently Mavericks front office thinks that his body's just going to fall apart within the next 5 years because of his
Mm.
conditioning and chronic injuries and
Drinking,
whatnot. Like,
drinking, and then they were like saying now it came out like they were also concerned about his drinking, and I'm like,
yeah, but
keep
at the
keep
end of
telling
the
yourself whatever
day,
you need to hear. It's
right? At the end of the day, there was a report then that came out that said Luca was so upset with all of the
yeah,
reports that came out that he went on vacation for a week during All Star break, but he took a trainer with him and trained for
yeah,
multiple hours
yeah,
every day while he was on vacation. And
yeah.
apparently, the quote from the Lakers, someone within the Lakers organization, is that Nico Harrison really like lit a fire under Luca after trading him and
Yeah.
saying all that crap about
And
him.
That's
And I
scary.
mean,
It really is.
yeah, it's like if we were getting, 75% Luca, what's going to happen
Hmm.
if now, say, this offseason, just to spite the Mavs and spite Nico, he goes and, really hits it hard conditioning wise and really gets into like the
Hmm.
best shape of his life right as he's entering his physical prime.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it already, like coming back from this knee injury, playing a couple games, and getting comfortable with the Lakers. He drops a triple double against the Mavericks.
Yep.
You know, like he's already starting to get back to Luka form, and
Hmm.
this is like coming off of a knee injury without a ton of conditioning to get himself back into basketball shape. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I
I
just
don't know.
feel
I
like,
don't.
yeah, I feel like again, it's gonna become even more of a talking point as Luka's career progresses. But I think at the end of the day, like we're all just going to continue to talk about how badly Nico fumbled.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, like even like looking at I mean, like take Jokic for example. Like I get he plays a different position. He plays a center. He's a big man, but his conditioning, like, he is not a mobile guy, but the way he can facilitate and score and do everything a center is just unbelievable. And you don't hear a peep about his conditioning. It's how he's built, and he is one of the top three players in the world right now. And it's I don't know. Like I don't want to, we're gonna keep talking about it because it's such a generational fumble and such something that you don't ever see ever. And it's
Hmm.
just like, not only did they obviously trade him, but trading him for what a washed player, a bench player, and a first. Like
Yeah,
I don't like the Mavs
yeah,
deserve every
and
negative
then
thing coming towards
well,
them. It's just
yeah, exactly. Well, and then there's all these questions about Luka's conditioning and his availability, and whatnot. And then they go trade for Anthony Davis, who's historically one of the more injury-prone players in the league, and then he gets
yeah,
hurt in his Mavericks debut.
and we haven't seen
It's just yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, hopefully he'll be healthy for the playoffs, and I think he should be.
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I just don't understand the decision to trade someone who you deem as injury prone, even though he really hasn't been historically,
yeah.
um, for a guy who has historically missed a ton of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I get like that, oh, like they want to focus on defense, but I'm like I get AD relatively like in comparison to like previous years where he's really been like not healthy. Like he's been healthy the past couple years, and that's been great for them. But he still has that injury history. He always will. And Luca, you can say whatever about his conditioning. He went to the finals last year and he was not healthy. He wasn't conditioned. He was on one leg. We saw
Hmm.
it, like, and we
Yeah,
know how he, what he went through and what he played through. He gave everything to that organization, and it was a slap in the face. So whatever he does to them and to the league, we can all blame Nico for it.
yeah,
You know.
no, 100%.
All right, so I wanted to bring up this quote from Stephen A. Smith on First Take a couple days ago. He said, "quote Michael Jeffrey Jordan. That's the kind of pace Shea Gilgeous Alexander is on." And I don't, I don't love SGA. I respect him, like the way he's led this young Thunder team. But to say that when he's accomplished what he's a two-time All Star, that's it at 26. When you have Giannis who won in finals at two-time MVP, Finals MVP at 26. Tatum has a ring and all these accomplishments at 26, and SGA hasn't been to a conference finals. Like it doesn't make This is why nobody watches it, and this is why the ESPN and just the way the game's covered is just so horrendous.
I mean,
You
I
know?
just like I understand that the whole point of sports media, especially at like ESPN, is to say crazy stuff so we talk about it, and it's working.
Yeah.
Um, but like it gets to a point where I mean something like that comparing SGA to Michael Jordan is just like it's
Yeah.
laughable how idiotic it sounds. You know,
Yeah.
like you said, you're talking about like a guy he's leading a young team to
Yeah.
the best record in the West. Um, I mean, they're primed to make a run at a championship here in the next couple years. But
Yep.
also, I mean, look at how stacked that Thunder team is. You know, they have
hmm
so many pieces. You know, they have
And that,
Chet,
yeah,
they have Hartenstein, Lou Dort, they have J Dub. You know, they have a great bench. They're super
Caruso
deep.
is a phenomenal defender. That was a huge
Caruso,
pickup.
yeah. I mean, they're super deep and they're super well coached. And obviously, I mean, Shea's the catalyst that makes it all work. But I mean, again, like Michael Jordan didn't have that kind of help.
No.
You
And even
know,
like
like
LeBron's Cavs when they won the final, he like that's what MJ and LeBron did. They carried
right,
teams. Like yeah, they had
right,
like a co-superstar to help. Like LeBron
right,
had Kyrie, MJ had Scotty, but to have a full team that is like the team works, and that's why they're so good. And
right,
SGA isn't doing anything special. He's just, I mean, he's a they say free throw merchant, and eh, like he takes more free throws than Giannis, and that shouldn't happen. It just
right.
the way those two play are so different, and it just I get why they say that about him, but at the same time, it's just like I get he's having a great year. He's on track to win MVP, but he's not carrying that team. He is leading the team. It's a big difference.
I mean, the thing, like the word generational gets thrown around all the time. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I think
that
that people really conflate the difference between generational superstar and just like a great
a really
team
good player.
leader, a really good a really good superstar because
Yes,
I mean, guys like Shea, they don't come around once in a generation. They come around once every couple years. Someone who's
yeah,
super efficient at creating their own shot, someone who can get to the
yeah,
free throw line a ton. I mean,
hmm
there's a handful of other guys who play just like Shea that are currently in the
yeah,
league right now. You know,
yeah.
James Harden was
Yep,
doing it to a more impressive level back when he was in his prime.
that was
J-
carrying the team. I would argue more
right. Well, because
than
yeah,
than what Shea's doing.
you look at the pieces that he had around him compared to what
Yeah,
Shea has, and the fact that
yeah,
I think they got close to a finals. I think they were at a couple points in the conference finals. Um, I think at one point they were a game away from the finals. And
yeah,
yeah, that's dropping. Like there's a Stephen. He's averaging 40 because like
yeah,
he was on a stretch where he was averaging 40. There
yeah.
was a stat that I saw where um, there was a night where his over under for points was like 44 and a half or something like that, and he scored 60. Like
Yeah.
it you're talking about just like a different level above what Shea is.
hmm
And when there's guys that you can say like, put above him, you're not a generational guy, because you
Yeah.
have I think like Jalen Brunson plays very similar to Shea.
He
You know,
does. He
I
does.
I
And
I
it's
think
yeah.
yeah, there's definitely guys throughout the league that obviously score a ton of points. They're super important in their team's offense. They get to the free throw line a lot, but you always have those guys in the league. Like there's always going to be a
hmm
handful of them scattered throughout the league. And it's like what Shea's doing isn't anything like special that we haven't
Yeah.
seen before.
hmm
You talk about if you want to talk about generational guys, you talk about guys like Giannis, like Jokic, like Steph, LeBron.
Yeah.
Those guys are
Yep.
generational because they've all done
Yeah.
things. They've all done things and broken records and accomplished feats in the NBA that we've never seen before, and we for
Hmm.
probably all of them, they've done things
Yeah,
that we'll probably never see again.
yeah. It's like Giannis is like the best like what was it 30 he's averaged what 10 and 5 on 50% shooting. Like we've
Hmm.
never seen that, and then he did it back to back years. And then
Yeah,
Jokic obviously he's having triple doubles. Like centers don't do that. Centers don't
yeah.
do what he
Don't
does.
average triple doubles.
um
Yeah,
Steph completely changed the game. His 3-point record will never, I don't think it'll ever be broken. um LeBron obviously speaks for himself. But it's just, I don't know. When I think anybody like rational that's like, okay, talk about like the best players in the world right now, Shea should not be brought up in that conversation.
right. I mean, at
You
the end of
know.
the day, anyone with eyes that and a brain that watches basketball should be
Hmm.
saying, the best players in the world. If you're putting them in a tier, it's Jokic and Giannis at the top, and then
Yeah.
you can start the conversation about who should be below
Yeah.
them from there. Those are the
Yeah.
two best
They're
players in
they're
the
they're
NBA
one A
right
and one
now.
B.
1A and 1B,
Yeah.
100%. They're the two best players in the NBA. And anyone who's trying to argue anything else otherwise just either is
Doesn't.
bandwagoning super hard for their team or their guy, or they're just
Yeah.
not watching basketball.
And I think like you look at the MVP race and what Shea's done, like he deserves it. I'm not
Right.
taking that away from him.
Yeah.
But and then like Jokic, it's voter fatigue, and it's the same
Hmm.
thing with Giannis. It's really unfortunate that it's like, oh, we just kind of expect Jokic to average a 30-point triple double, and we kind of expect Giannis to average 30, 10, and 5, and just it's like, okay, like we learn to learn expect these things. Where Shea is like, oh, he's leading a really young team, which is impressive. I think average age is like 24 or something,
Yeah.
and um, like he's on track to win MVP. I'll be shocked if he doesn't win it. It's deserved, but let's pump the brakes on generational and throwing him in conversations with MJ.
Right. Well, because I mean, his MVP resume this year, it follows a super similar formula to kind of like what we see from MVP now. It's
Yeah.
the the superstar leader of an emerging contender is usually
Mm-hmm.
the one that starts to get MVP buzz.
Yeah.
Before, when it was Giannis's time to lead it or to win it, the Bucks were just coming into their own, and with Bud and Middleton and
Uh-huh.
Bledsoe, and they were, leading the East, winning 60 games. That's when he
Yeah.
wins his. Jokic then after that follows that up. The Nuggets come into their own with Jamal Murray, MPJ, Aaron Gordon,
Mm-hmm.
and that team, and the Nuggets come in their own as contenders. Jokic is the catalyst for that. He wins his MVPs. Now we're
Yep.
seeing the same thing again with Shea. The Thunder are finally coming into their own. Shea's the catalyst, the one that makes everything work, the superstar leading that team. And now it's time for him to
Yeah.
win an MVP, and rightfully so. He definitely deserves it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And
it's
there was talk last year with like him, like he should have won it last year, and that's debatable. This year, I don't think it's debatable. I don't.
mhm. Yeah, no, I think he's running away with it. Um, and part of that too, and I mean, is because you look at the Nuggets struggled early. Now they
Yep.
are playing much better, but also voter fatigue plays a factor in that too. And the Bucks just aren't winning enough games to be a top two team for
Yeah.
Giannis to get
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
really the MVP
Yeah.
conversation above finishing like second or third.
Yeah, and like as you know, as Bucks fans, we kind of like accept that. It's like we at this point, Giannis has two MVPs. I don't think anytime soon, at least, he'll win another one. But again, we'll see what happens.
Hmm.
But I just at this, I think it gradually goes from leading a team, winning MVP to like, okay, I don't care about so much about MVPs is like I need team accolades, I need titles, I need Finals MVPs. And that's just the natural progression. And
Hmm.
right now, Shea is starting the
Right.
MVP phase of that. So
Yeah. Talking about a former MVP in Kevin Durant, he's been pretty vocal this week, especially, and kind of since the trade deadline, um,
mm,
just about like how unhappy he's been in Phoenix, um,
yeah,
and which is unfortunate because it seemed like, from all accounts, he was happy there, but then there was the
hmm
report that the Suns were shopping him. Um, then he makes some comments on social media about the criticism that he gets, that he thinks might
yeah,
not be completely warranted, which I agree because
yeah,
it's a very team game. You don't One player isn't deciding whether or not the Suns are winning or losing games.
hmm
Um, but by all accounts, it looks like the Suns are probably going to move on from him this
yep.
offseason. Um,
And
so it kind of brings
both
up the
both
question,
parties
like,
kind of know that. Yeah,
yeah. But so it kind of brings up the question, like, what's a good fit for him, and who has the
yeah.
pieces to even um, go trade for him?
I think like a lot of teams have the pieces, but again, like how much do you want to give up for? Obviously, KD's a Hall of Famer, but at this point, he's late in his career. He's had that Achilles injury. He's still great, really good, but it's like for teams, I think the Rockets was one of those teams that is thrown out there. You mentioned that they're maybe going to be looking to move on from Jalen Green. I think a lot of it will depend on how teams do in the postseason. I think that if the Rockets are like a shock and maybe they're like a first round exit, if they run into some like really hot team, maybe they could be like, all right, this isn't really working. Maybe we should consider KD, but I don't know what kind of contender teams would be willing to give up a whole lot for someone like KD at this point in his career.
Right. I think the Rockets is definitely interesting, right? Because you
Hmm.
have that young core, um, but they're all, like, not everyone can start, not everyone can play a ton of minutes.
Yeah.
They got a lot of young pieces, and they're
Hmm.
starting to come into their own also. I think they're sitting at the 3 seed right now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you think about maybe they get to the Western Conference semis and they have to face a team like Denver, and maybe they get outclassed and they take a look at the team and they say, "Dang, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're not in that top tier yet, but we think we can be." Um, I think making the decision, to move on from like Jalen Green, for example, um,
Yeah.
honestly, like, wouldn't even hurt them a ton because, at the very least, I mean, you'd be getting off of his contract. Um, you'd be removing the black hole in the offense that is Jalen Green, um,
Yeah.
and bringing in some veteran leadership to lead all those young guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think the
And I
Rockets are
don't,
a really
yeah.
good, potential landing spot. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I feel like the Nuggets could be an interesting thing too. There's
Hmm.
been comments and rumblings in the past that the Nuggets might look to kind of blow things up if they can't get back to the finals. They'd be, I
Yeah.
think, an interesting team. I think the Sixers might be another interesting team to think about too. Um,
Depending on,
Depending on
yeah.
if the Suns are willing to trade Paul George or trade for Paul George
Yeah.
and take on his
Yeah.
contract, but
Yeah.
then but that's looking
Yeah.
like, I mean, I think he's been playing better lately. Um,
Maybe.
but it's a really tough contract to move in general. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess it'll really just come down to, I mean, what the Suns are willing to accept. But also, I think teams trying to trade for Kevin Durant have the leverage because, from what we've heard, KD wants out
Mm-hmm.
now. The Suns wanted to potentially move him. Obviously, they feel like things aren't working. As of right now, I don't even think the Suns are in the play-in. I think they're sitting at like the
Yeah.
11 or 12 seed. So it looks like they're going to miss
Mm-hmm.
the playoffs altogether. Um,
Right.
and they probably, I'm assuming they don't have their first round pick, considering they probably gave it up for KD. So
Yeah.
I mean,
There. Yeah. And then it doesn't seem like you're going to move Beal. He doesn't want to go. Booker
right,
doesn't really want to go.
right,
And I think a lot of it did stem from, I think the relationship was fine until his name started getting floated around the trade deadline, and then he's like, what, like, it probably caught off guard and a little bit offended, you
right.
know. And now it's like you're not doing nearly as good as you expected with, but like this is Bud's first year, and it's just not working. Like we saw, like oh Beal, Booker, and KD, like oh they can all have 30 on every given night, but it doesn't work. It didn't work. It won't work.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
because
I'll be
yeah, I
I'll be
mean,
shocked if they make it out of the plane. I will. I'll be
I
just
yeah,
with
I'll be
how
with how they've been playing
you think.
lately. I don't
Yeah,
even think they're going to make the playoffs. Um,
you think
and
they
I
make the
mean,
play in though?
no,
You don't think so? You think
no,
they'll
I
fall
mean,
past the 11?
I mean, the moves that they made at the trade deadline. I mean, they got Nick Richards, right? Like that was really the only trade they
Yeah,
made. Definitely makes them better, but also you have to look at the teams that are fighting in the play-in to make it in, and just
yeah,
the brand of basketball the Suns have been playing lately just isn't good.
yeah,
They've been finding ways to lose games against bad teams. And
yeah,
when that starts happening, you have to, I think, ask yourself, are we actually a good team or are we also one of those bad teams? And
hmm,
unfortunately, somehow, you have that offensive firepower, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant. It's just not working. And I mean, part of that is their style of play. They all need the ball in their hand to be effective scorers.
yeah.
Um,
It doesn't. Yeah,
and when you have three dominant ball handlers like that, it's tough. But now the Suns are in an even tougher spot, I feel like, where they have to move off of KD. They want to move off of Bradley Beal, but he has a no trade clause. Um, and
yeah,
then, I mean, you got to hope that Devin Booker is going to continue to stay loyal through the idea of another rebuild and just doing a full reset. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting spot to be in for the Suns. Um, Definitely not one that
yeah.
that I'm envious of.
Yeah, because like obviously, like there are teams. Again, the Bucks are like another team where it's like they've gone all in these next couple years. But like you can sit there and say like, okay, I could like realistically see them going to the conference finals. Like there's a world where that happens if
Hmm,
they have the right matchups and if Giannis and Dame like hit their stride.
right.
The Suns aren't close to
Right.
anything, and you don't
Because
have anything that like you got to get a haul for KD, and I don't see a world where that happens.
yeah, well, and because with like the Bucks, for example, I think you can say that about any team that wants is trying to contend. Like if things
Yeah,
fall, if the pieces fall correctly and the team starts clicking the way that they should, they can be contenders. Um,
yeah,
and we've seen, stretches where the Bucks play really good basketball and they win, a couple games in a row, and then maybe they fumble a little bit, lose a couple games, but then they can fall back into that rhythm, and that's where we're able to say as fans, like if they can just put the pieces together and stay consistent. But with the Suns,
yeah,
we've never seen that. Like there hasn't been a stretch this season where they've been able to put all the pieces together and just like go on a run where they win a ton of games and
yeah,
look like a dominant team where it's like, oh, maybe if they make the playoffs, they can make some noise. Like they're struggling and fighting just to get into the play-in, which like to be at the 10 seed. And I mean that's
yeah.
also a
Like,
product of
yeah,
the West being so tough.
yeah,
But
yep,
when you look at a team with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, like you should be able to put the pieces around those guys to at least make the
Hmm.
playoffs. And
Yeah,
I
because
don't know,
yeah,
somehow they
I'm
just haven't
looking.
been
They're
able
they're
to.
2-9 in they're 2-9 in their last 11.
Yeah,
They beat Utah and Chicago.
yeah,
They had a 19-point loss to Portland, a 31-point loss to OKC, a 17-point loss to Denver, an 18-point loss to Toronto. Like
yeah. It's not like they had a hard
you're not.
schedule.
Yeah,
Like they were losing,
exactly.
they're losing to bad
Yeah,
teams.
yeah,
You know, it's just yeah, it's
yeah.
unfortunate.
And that
And
Spurs game, I think that was without Lemby, if I'm not
mm-hmm,
mistaken.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They're not. Yeah, so it's unfortunate. But I think big changes probably coming for them this offseason, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yep. Yep.
Talking about, I mean, potential big changes too. If we switch over to the East, uh, obviously, fellow podcaster Paul George has a big podcast, Podcast P. Recently talked about how he's taken a break from podcasting to focus on contending for a championship. Um, as the Sixers sit right now, I don't think they're going to make the
Yeah.
playoffs. Um,
No, they're not going to make them play in at this point even.
yeah, what's their record right now?
They're sitting at 20 and 38. They are 2.5 games out of the 10 seed. They're sitting at the 12 seed right now.
Right.
They're 1-9 in their last 10. They've lost 9 in a row.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the thing. The Sixers are in such a crazy spot too. I feel like because you gave Paul George all that money
Yeah,
and he just hasn't panned out how he was supposed to. You know, it was supposed to be an upgrade from Tobias Harris. He hasn't been. You've dealt with, McCain looking like he's going to be a great rookie, then he gets hurt. Um, Maxi's missed a little bit of time, but he's still been great this year. He's been the one bright spot on the team. And then you
the one
have,
player I like on that team.
yeah, and then you've had Embiid, who's struggled with his knee injuries. And it looks like he's going to have another surgery. And there's tension there within the organization, too, because apparently he wants to have surgery. Sixers think he's fine to play through it, but he's insisting that he needs another one. And now you're looking at a timeline where if he goes and gets another knee surgery, he's probably missing all of next season too.
Yeah.
So now just
Mhm.
being, I think for the Sixers front office and coaching staff being ignorant has cost them another year of potentially being a contender and having a
Yeah.
former MVP available to play,
And I think, I mean, I brought this up the other day that, like, they started out, like, not good.
like
McCain
four
was
and
playing well.
13. Yeah,
Um, Embiid wasn't there. Paul George just was not, like, he was not even playing close to his contract.
mm,
And you look at what the Grizzlies did a couple years ago. Was it last year? Maybe it was last year actually.
yeah,
When
yeah,
they had all those injuries within 20 games in the year, and they just like, all right, we're gonna chalk this
mm,
and look towards next year.
yeah.
And it worked. Like they're one of the top teams in the league right now, in the West, and it worked. Like obviously, like they're younger and they're able to bounce back quicker. Like Embiid's knee is getting like to the point where it's like I wouldn't say retirement, but it's like at what point can you like you're a burden to your team and you're getting paid a lot of money and it's not working. And I do think a lot of it is ignorance from the Sixers coaching or training staff just being like, all right, not like tough it out, we're just gonna wait instead of being like, okay, 20 games in, this isn't working. Go get surgery again and we'll recoup next year. And then maybe you have a shot. But now you've like you said, they've probably cost them another year.
Right, because I mean, he came back. I think when he came back, they were 4 and 13 when he made
Okay.
his debut. Um, and it was pretty obvious that he came back and they didn't start winning. You know, him
Yeah.
being healthy didn't fix things. And so I think that
Hmm.
should have shown them right there that okay, like we have bigger problems
Yeah.
than just our guys being injured. This team as constructed isn't going to be good enough to contend. And
Yeah.
I think right
And why
there,
force it?
early at the beginning of the season, they should have just scrapped it. Scrap the season, let
Yeah.
Embiid go get surgery. You already had Jared McCain get
Hmm.
surgery. Maybe you are able to rest Paul George a little bit. I know he's been banged up
Uh-huh.
throughout the season, and just do a full reset. Get a good draft
Yeah.
pick. Make something, make something happen in the draft. Get a good player and try to bounce back with hopefully, a recovered Embiid, a healthy Paul George, a healthy Jared McCain, healthy Tyrese Maxey, and you're able to do what the Grizzlies did, like you said, and just take a year to reset, recoup, and bounce back and try to be contenders
Yeah.
again. But unfortunately, like
Hmm.
now, I mean, Embiid's not getting any younger. You're talking about
Yeah.
when and if he gets the surgery, he's missing a whole season. I mean, I'm not sure how old he is right now, but he's going to be,
I think I want to say he's 30.
he's 30. So then, I mean, you're talking about him coming back, being 31, 32.
He'll be 31 on March 16th.
Yeah, okay. So you're talking about, I mean, by the time he's able to come back, being
He's
32,
32.
almost 33. And now you're looking at he's starting to get out, he's aging out of his prime. The championship window's closing because he's going to start to regress. Paul George is not getting any younger either. And sure,
Yeah.
you have these two young guards in Maxey and McCain who have been bright spots for the team, but you have to look at the pieces and think like, does it fit the timeline? Do
Hmm.
Embiid and Paul George fit the timeline of Maxey and McCain? I mean, not really, in my opinion.
No.
So it's like, what do you do? Because now you have to have Embiid have the surgery, but also, I mean, I feel like you would maybe want to try to move on from him
Yeah.
if he's not able to get back to
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Like personally, I would be like you have what seems to be another really solid find in Jared McCain and a
Hmm.
guy that you can build a team around. And obviously Maxi is extremely he's a very young talented player. He's gotten paid. Um it just I don't know. Those contracts are just so brutal. Both Paul George and Embiid. It's like and if like the thing is like if Nico Harrison had Joel Embiid as like saying like that's like what Luca is, like if he traded Joel Embiid like he did Luca, I would
Hmm.
I could kind of see that because it's like okay, but like you're in your early like you're 30, 31, you're never healthy, like you haven't made out of the first round, you can't lead a team, you have a big ego, like I would get that, but
Hmm.
I don't know why the Sixers are just so stubborn. It doesn't make sense to me. They're so
Right.
stubborn, and they want this situation with Embiid to work, and it just won't.
Yeah, it just won't. I mean, they've given him so much leeway, I feel like. I mean, even the way his career started with an injury that put
Yeah.
him out for a year, and then
Hmm.
his rookie year, which was really his second year in the league, I think he also gets hurt, and then like he doesn't win rookie of the year because of that. Um, it seems like
Hmm.
every year, like the
It's
one
something.
year he wasn't injured, he won MVP, and I
Yeah.
feel like that's what's holding, like that's what they're holding on to is the fact that a couple years ago he was able to get to an MVP level, but now I think his knee, it just seems like, is deteriorating to the point where, like, I just don't know if he's going to be able to get back there, even if he has the surgery.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's yeah, kind of like Kawhi. Like we've now known the extent of Kawhi's knee is
Hmm.
that he physically can't play like more than what 40 or 50 NBA games in a
Yeah,
year,
like
like
6 months.
his
Like
body
he's
won't
got like
allow it.
6 months a year. Yeah, before his body breaks down. And
And
I
I
mean,
think, I mean, Embiid, just like how he's built too. Like,
yeah, he's a big
like
dude.
that's another thing too. He's a big dude, and I think if he went on a diet and got like some like help with it, like nutritionist, it would help a lot with his body and the stress on his knee. But
Well, and it's not
I
it's
just,
because also like it's not like he uses his weight and his size. Like
right,
he's a foul baiter. He shoots a lot of threes. Like he plays
it's a disgusting
outside.
brand of basketball.
Yeah, he plays outside and doesn't play physical. Um,
Yeah,
so it's not like he needs that weight either. So I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of questions within that organization too. Um,
yeah, yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how they handle everything going forward. But yeah,
Hmm.
I just feel like until you get off the Embiid contract and the Paul George contract, they're really not going to be contending for anything anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of contending though, I mean, you start to look at the playoff race in the East, and
Hmm.
all of a sudden, dude, the six seeded Pistons. What are they sitting at
Yeah.
record wise right now?
They're sitting at 33 and 26, 15 and a half games out of the one seed, but more importantly, a game out of the four seed. They're right behind Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
Pacers are there too.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've hit a streak. They're on an 8 game win streak.
They've won.
But this is really,
They've
yeah, eight
won.
straight.
Yeah, 8 in a row. 22 of their last 31. Um, yeah, they're. I mean, arguably the hottest team in the NBA right now.
Yeah, they beat Boston by 20 last night.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, they're playing
yeah,
a
and
really good brand of basketball.
yeah,
I
and
yeah
again, a lot of it's Bickerstaff's done a phenomenal job.
yeah.
Like Kate is having
Cade's finally coming into
a
his
great
own.
year.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah, Kate's
they've.
averaging, yeah, geez,
What's he averaging?
20, 26, 6 and 10
Yeah, I
on
mean,
46 and 36, 46, 36, 85 shooting.
yeah, I mean,
So,
first time All Star this year. He's really come into his own, and I think the team around him, has really
mhm,
benefited from the coaching change. Like JB Bickerstaff has allowed the team to really, I think, play fast and play loose too. Um,
yeah,
and then you look at some of the veteran additions that they made, bringing in Tobias Harris,
mhm,
Yeah,
Beasley.
Malik Beasley, um, and just allowing, I think, the guys to grow, and they've figured out a formula that's working.
Hmm.
They're arguably the hottest team in the East, and I mean, it kind of like begs the question, like for a lot of other teams, like are the Pistons going to be contenders soon? Because they're starting to sneak up. I mean, if they can sneak into that four seed,
Yeah,
it really would throw a cog into everything that we kind of thought we were going to see going forward in the playoffs. If now all of a
yeah,
sudden they're the four seed and they're hosting a playoff series against like the Pistons or the Bucks or the Pacers or the Bucks, um,
yeah.
you
That
know,
Pacers, if we get Pacers Pistons, that could be a fun series.
yeah,
I just like, I don't know, like obviously the game slows down a lot for like for everybody in the league. It just when it gets to playoffs, the game slows down, and I think it's become like this thing now. Is like when a young team makes it to the playoffs for the first time, you you are so hesitant on them going far because they need that experience.
hmm
And I think this would be a really good experience. To, I think even especially if they ran into Milwaukee, because Milwaukee has like Giannis has dominated the Pistons, and he's had their number seemingly over the past couple of years. So that would be an
yeah,
interesting series. And the Pacers are another are our young team.
hmm
So, but yeah, I think your 4, 5, 6 seed are probably Milwaukee, Indiana, and Detroit. What order? I'm not sure, but we'll see if the Pistons can continue to stay hot. And then the Pacers are also one of the better teams in the calendar year too, and the Bucks are. Um, hoping to try to figure it out. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah, I mean, especially it's interesting too, I think, because obviously I think the conversation forever has been how the West is so much better. I mean, that's going back
Yeah.
to even like when we were little. It's like, oh, the West is so much stronger. That's why LeBron
Hmm.
was able to make it to the finals, 8 times in a row or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but now, obviously, East is still not as strong as the West, but if you add a team like the Pistons into the mix who are young and up and coming, um, now out of nowhere you have 6 teams who are like really solid basketball teams,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the playoffs shake out because especially
Hmm.
like you said with those 3 teams, Pacers, Pistons, Bucks that are fighting for the 4, 5, 6. um, that playoff race becomes really tight because whoever falls to the 6, now they're looking at a potential Celtics or Knicks team first round that they got to see.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and, that makes things a lot tougher than having to play um, either, one of the other 2 teams that are fighting for that 4, 5, 6.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. It could. Yeah. I think it'll be fun playoffs in both conferences. But yeah, I think like the East is definitely there's like 6 teams, like you said, whereas the West it's like, I mean, you look Thunder, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Rockets. The Lakers are there. The Clippers. I always like Kenny was talking about this on his podcast. Like they're the second best defensive team in the league, and then if you can be like mediocre, like you're the 20th offensive team in the league. But if like they're a middle of the road team with a really good defense, that could be interesting. The Timberwolves are, they're so different than last year. The Warriors, we don't really know them, and then you got the Mavericks that are kind of we expect them to be solid once AD and once they get healthy. But there's definitely a handful of contending teams, and um, yeah, don't yeah, I honestly think that you have like teams like the Pacers and the Pistons, even the Magic, that need that playoff experience. And then once they get that, then you can kind of like look forward to next year, the years after, of like, okay, let's start to really build championship teams.
Mm-hmm. All right, that is going to do it for episode 3 of the Fundamentally Sound podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. A little bit of a shorter episode today. If there's anything that you want us to talk about, let us know in the comments down below. You can follow us on social media, on Instagram and on TikTok at Fundamentally Sound Pod. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, let us know what you thought. For Zach, I'm Jared. This has been the Fundamentally Sound podcast. We will see you all next week.